This is Dan Lynch from Delaware Natural Hoof Care. We're talking about flares and how we treat them here at our company. First, this is a cross section of the hoof. It is the cross section looking about from here. This is our P3. This is our sole. These slanted lines are our lamina. This is our outer hoof wall. Red is our inner hoof wall. You'll see in the drawings that most flares that the lamina is compromised, either from dietary issues, metabolic issues, or some people feel that excessive wall length, blah blah blah. One of the things we have to do is get our diet straightened out if we feel that's what it is. If we continue, this is the front view of a hoof. If you continue to have lines growing across this direction throughout the hoof, that indicates to me that you are having dietary issues. Some veterinarians are saying those are fever lines. I mean, you might get a bad fever, you might get a series of lines for a little bit, but throughout the whole hoof wall, that's a year's worth of growth. If you have a year's worth of fevers, then you really have an issue here. So what we're going to talk about first, we're going to talk about how their flares are treated, and mostly in traditional farrier services. What they do, they come in plain and simple, is they come in and they thin the hoof wall. They just take a rasp and they thin this out and get it nice and straight. And I mean, that looks good, but it's all cosmetic. What we're trying to do, we are trying to grow in new lamina. The lamina, once it's dead and stretched out like this, there is no repairing it. You have to grow it out. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to make it, much easier to grow out. When we thin this out like this, and don't get me wrong, it looks great, but there's more to the hoof than just looks. Once you get a healthy foot and get this growing out, it will be nice and straight. The problem I have is this thinning. You see here at the sole, when the P3 comes down like this, your sole flattens and it just pushes your flare back out again and again and again. With this thinness of your hoof wall at ground level, as it grows down, it will continue to, it will break. And if you were working in the quarters, addressing flares in the quarters, where, is this one of the reasons for quarter cracks? That depends on your horse. So the weakening this, when this comes down, the solar flattens out, pushes your flare back out because of a weakness here. Another thing is, when this does grow down to the ground, okay, this thinness grows down to the ground, it breaks, it cracks up. There's nothing to support, help with support. It has no choice but to break and crack. One of the things is, this represents a flat trim over on this side. Another thing is, when we do a flat trim and the flares are left alone, your directional forces, when the foot sinks into the ground, your directional forces push the foot or the hoof wall back out away from the inner structure. So what we do, okay, we want to take a flare and put a hard bevel on it here, okay, and this takes some pressure off. It puts more pressure on the sole. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But what this does with this is, when this foot sinks into the ground, okay, your directional forces, it pushes inward, okay. It doesn't continue to help with a trim like this to pull it out away from the hoof and put stress on our lamina. So we'll put that in there, and then I'll clean up this end a little bit. I might clean it up, say an inch, 3/4 of an inch up to help with that, to make it look a little nicer. But again, we don't want to do too much because it takes away from this bevel and its directional forces once again as it sinks into the ground. I understand some people are talking about thinning this out and helping with, because the tubules are growing out in this direction along with the flare, and you thin this out and the tubules tend to want to grow straighter. We have gotten the tubules to grow down. I don't think it's absolutely necessary to address that. I think the foot, once it becomes bonded well to the inner structure through healthy lamina, this helps it keep it in, and it does get it to grow straight down. We also we have to look at sole thickness. If we are in the collateral groove depth from here straight across to the depth of the to the collateral groove alongside the frog, this tells us about how thick our hoof wall is in the area, and that's an indicator on how much or how aggressive I can go with this. Sometimes if I have substantial amount of sole thickness, I'll go ahead and relieve all the pressure off the hoof wall, okay, and then so they can grow down faster and without any stress, and not be sore because we do have thickness of the hoof of the sole. That's important too, and depending on how much I will cut off. But again, with just doing this, look how much of it has already disappeared, where we still have down to here this thinness. Like I said, again, it's real important that you get your diet addressed. Also with this is in the quarters area. Another thing that helps when we do our hoof wall natural hoof care is we have an arch in our quarters, and the foot doesn't only expand and contract and outward, it expands and contracts downward also. And when we don't have this arch in the hoof wall, when this directional force comes down, then there's no place for this hoof wall to go down if we don't have this arch. Okay, so what it has to do, it has to pop out. And we think that this is one of the reasons why traditional farriers struggle so much with flaring, quarter cracks, blah, 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 all that stuff. Also, when we thin our hoof wall, the outer hoof wall has a function. And its function is protection from abrasion and concussion. But it also has a function, we feel, that the foot expands, okay, in this direction here, outward. Okay, then when the foot lifts off the ground, it pulls back in together and helps with blood flow. But the outer hoof wall, we feel, is also for containment of the inner structure. Okay, and when we continue to thin this out, we hurt that ability for the horse to be able to squeeze back in and help with blood flow. I feel, if you've ever dissected a foot, like, you would know, like, this is very hard to get off of the foot and to straighten out, and it's almost impossible to get it to completely straighten out. You can pull it apart, but it just snaps right back in. So do we inhibit that ability for the horse to help and pull itself back in together? That's pretty much covers it. If you guys have any questions or anything, please contact us at DelawareNaturalHoofCare.com. Thanks for your time.